Welcome to the Deacon English podcast, and welcome back to the Deep Dive. This is where we take, sometimes complex source material, complex ideas, and really break them down into practical, confident knowledge you can use.
Exactly. And today, we're diving deep into something absolutely essential. Real-life English for probably the most common scenario you'll encounter: food, ordering, all that social stuff around dining.
Right. It seems simple, but it's often where people feel, most nervous. Our mission today is really to equip you. We want to give you that toolkit so you move beyond just pointing at a menu.
We're aiming for that sweet spot, where you sound not just like you can be understood, but you actually sound friendly, polite, comfortable, whether you're ordering something complicated or just asking, hey, what's good here?
And food, it just comes up constantly, doesn't it? It's universal. The words repeat all the time: coffee, water, please, thank you. And the polite ways we ask for things. You learn them for ordering food. You can use them almost anywhere else.
That's the key. We're pulling out those little structures, those polite phrases from our source material to give you confidence you can use, immediately.
Yeah, we really want to show that difference. The difference between just barking an order, give me water, and making a request that sounds, sophisticated, polite.
Mm-hmm. If you can master the rhythm of ordering food confidently and politely, you've actually mastered a huge chunk of everyday social English. It's foundational.
Okay, so let's start with the why. Why food? Why kick off with this? Some people might think, oh, that's too basic. But the research, the material we looked at, it shows it's kind of the perfect way in, isn't it?
It really is. It's just so accessible. And, it's human. Everyone eats.
Yeah.
And honestly, most people actually enjoy talking about food, sharing what they like, what they had for lunch. It just, lowers the conversational bar instantly.
Yeah, you don't need specialist knowledge like you do for, say, politics or quantum physics.
Exactly. Think about all the places this comes up: a quick coffee, a proper sit-down meal, maybe grabbing something from a street stall, even just lunch with colleagues. Food is always there, always relevant.
And the practical side is huge. This isn't just about fancy restaurants. It's about that moment when you're maybe trying to understand a server with a strong accent, or you're at a market somewhere trying to figure out, is this spicy? What's actually in this?
Right. And what we found looking at the context is that simply feeling prepared makes a massive difference to anxiety levels. If you know the right phrases, the polite ways to ask.
You feel more in control.
Precisely. You can take a breath, you can ask for more time, you can ask specific things like, does this have nuts? Or how was it cooked? Without feeling flustered or, like you're being difficult. That feeling of control is just invaluable when you're learning.
I always come back to those simple questions that just work wonders, like that key phrase that kept popping up in the material. What do you recommend?
Oh, that one's brilliant. It's pure social gold, as you said.
Yeah.
Because it instantly changes the whole dynamic. You're not just a customer telling someone what to do.
You're asking for their expertise.
Exactly.
Fine.
You're asking for advice. It builds this tiny, immediate connection. The server feels acknowledged. You might get a fantastic suggestion you wouldn't have chosen otherwise. It's such an easy win.
It also shows a bit of trust, doesn't it? I trust your judgment here.
It does. And the beauty of food vocabulary is just how often it repeats. Once you really get words like spicy, fresh, grilled, medium, you'll hear and use them constantly. On menus, watching cooking shows, talking to friends. It's such a good return on investment for your memory.
Okay, so we've established food is this great vehicle for conversation, for building fluency. Let's get into the nuts and bolts then. What's the essential toolkit? The words you actually need to describe things and make specific choices.
Yeah, we need to get beyond just the absolute basics like breakfast, lunch, dinner. Those are important, obviously.
Right, the core nouns. Meals, breakfast, lunch, dinner. Drinks, coffee, tea, juice, water. Staples, sandwich, salad, soup, rice. Proteins, chicken, beef, fish, and vegetables, of course. These are our building blocks.
But to sound natural, you need more detail. You need the words to describe how things are cooked, what they taste like, and crucially, how to customize your order. Think of proteins. You almost never just order chicken, right?
No, you need to know how it's prepared. Is it grilled chicken, baked fish, maybe pan-fried something, or deep-fried? Getting those preparation words, often verbs turned into adjectives, that's a really big step up.
It is. And then texture. The source material really highlighted using descriptive words that give someone a clear picture in their mind.
So instead of just good.
Exactly. Think about texture words. Is something crispy? Is that steak tender or maybe a bit tough? Is the soup creamy or perhaps chunky? For fish, a great word is flaky. Using these words takes you from saying, yeah, the food was good, to something much more engaging like, oh, the fish was perfectly flaky and the sauce it came with was so creamy.
That paints a much better picture. And then the basic taste words, the foundation: spicy, sweet, salty, fresh. And, of course, temperature, hot and cold.
Okay, can we pause on hot and spicy for just a second?
Yeah.
Because it's a classic point of confusion and potential disaster for learners.
Oh, yeah, I can see that.
In English, hot usually means temperature, right? Is your coffee hot? Is the soup hot? Whereas spicy refers to that chili heat, the flavor intensity. I actually remember a time years ago, a friend ordered a spicy chai, thinking it just meant like lots of spices, cinnamon and stuff.
Go.
Yeah. It was loaded with chili flakes. He was expecting warmth. He got fire.
Right.
So knowing that difference, hot for temperature, spicy for chili heat, is pretty important to avoid surprises.
That's a great example. Okay, so taste, texture, preparation. What about making specific choices? Customizing.
This is where you really show you're comfortable and specific. We're talking sizes, obviously. Small, medium, large. But also those crucial little modifiers. Extra cheese, no sugar, no ice.
And when you use a phrase like no ice, it shows you're thinking ahead, right? You're being specific about what you want. It helps the server get it right the first time, and it signals you're not just passively accepting whatever comes.
Exactly. It shows engagement. And while we're on customization, we absolutely have to mention safety language, especially around allergies. This is like the most critical customization.
Yeah.
You need a clear, polite way to ask. You don't just blurt out, net allergy.
Right, that could sound abrupt or demanding, even though it's urgent. So what's the recommended polite way to handle that?
You use that polite structure we'll talk more about soon with modal verbs. Something like, could you tell me if this dish contains nuts? Or maybe, is this prepared completely separate from peanuts? Using phrases like, could you tell me, or is it possible, softens the question, even though the underlying need is serious.
Using words like completely or entirely adds that necessary precision too.
Yes, good point. And one last thing on vocabulary for now, geography matters. Our sources pointed out knowing those little UK versus US differences, especially for food.
Ah, yes. The classic chips versus fries, bill versus check.
Exactly. You ask for the bill in London, you get chips with your fish, which are what Americans call fries. You ask for the check in New York, you get fries. Knowing the tiny difference just saves confusion and makes you sound a bit more clued in locally. We'll come back to bill and check when we talk about finishing the meal.
Okay, this feels like the perfect transition. We have the words, now how do we structure them politely? This feels like the absolute core of achieving that social fluency we talked about.
It really is. This is where we consciously move away from those direct commands, give me, I want, which, even if you don't mean it, can easily sound rude in English. We need to embrace the polite request structure.
It's the difference between just getting what you need and actually sounding friendly while you do it.
Right. And the key tools here are what linguists sometimes call modal verbs and hedging devices. Sounds fancy, but they're just the words we use to soften requests. They're not extra fluff. They are the politeness mechanism.
So let's list those essential polite phrases, the ones that should just roll off the tongue when ordering.
Okay, number 1, can I have? Very common, very useful.
Then I'd like, which of course is short for I would like, also very standard.
Could I get? Maybe slightly softer than can I have, but very interchangeable with the situations.
And that golden question for advice, what do you recommend?
Don't forget the ad man, can I see the menu, please? And can I get the bill check, please? Notice the please is almost always there.
Okay, now for the contrast. Let's really hit this home using those examples from the source material. This is where you get that aha moment about why English works this way.
All right, so the direct, blunt command, give me coffee.
Sounds pretty demanding, right? The polite version, using that modal verb, could I have a coffee, please? Much better.
Okay, next. I want water.
Again, strong, maybe too strong. The polite way uses may or could. May I have some water? Or could I get some water, please?
What if you've been waiting a while and you need the menu? Direct. Bring menu.
Oof. Yeah, that's not great. The polite way acknowledges the other person. Could you bring the menu, please? Adding you, and please turns it into a request, not an order.
And the abrupt ending. Bill there.
Needs softening. The friendly, structured way. Can I get the bill, please? Or maybe, excuse me, could we get the check when you have a moment?
It's fascinating when you think about why English relies so much on this indirectness. It often comes down to a cultural value, something linguists call hedging or politeness based on non-imposition.
Non-imposition, meaning you don't want to impose on the other person.
Exactly. You don't want to sound like you're demanding their time or effort. So using a word like could and could I have is a classic hedge.
How so? How is it a hedge?
Because grammatically, could frames it as a question about possibility. You're subtly asking, is it possible for me to have this? Or are you able to get this for me? It gives the server, linguistically speaking, the theoretical option to say no, even though in a cafe, they almost certainly won't.
Ah, I see. So it softens the request by making it less direct, less like an assumption that they must do it.
Precisely. It respects their autonomy in a tiny linguistic way.
Okay, I get the mechanism. But here's a challenge I hear from learners. Does using something like may I have sometimes sound a bit too formal? Like if I'm just grabbing a coffee quickly at a drive-thru, is may I a bit much? Would can I get be better?
That's a really good question. And yes, you're right. May I have can sometimes sound a touch formal in very casual settings, although it's never actually wrong. It's always polite.
So can I get or I'd like are probably safer bets for everyday casual use.
Absolutely. Can I get and I'd like are probably the most common and natural sounding in most casual spots like coffee shops or fast food places. The most important thing, honestly, is probably adding that please and using a friendly tone. Often the tone carries more weight than whether you chose can or could or may.
Which brings us perfectly to intonation. Those soft words like could and please are crucial, but if you say them with a really flat or aggressive voice,
it completely undermines the politeness.
Exactly. Politeness is something you hear. You really want to aim for a gentle, perhaps slightly rising tone when you're asking for something. When you say, could I have a coffee, please? That little lift on please makes it sound warm, open.
Whereas a flat tone, or one that goes down sharply at the end, can sound more like a demand or like you're annoyed.
Right. And then like we touched on earlier, it's not just the words or the sound. Backing it up with simple body language, making eye contact, maybe a little nod or a smile, reinforces that message of friendliness and respect.
Yeah.
Your voice, your words, your expression, they all need to match.
Okay, so we've got the vocabulary, we've got the polite structures, the tone. What's next? How do we use this beyond just the transaction? How do we use food for actual conversation?
Great question. Once you're comfortable with ordering, the next level is sharing your own preferences, talking about what you like and dislike. This happens all the time, right? With friends, if someone's hosting you, sometimes even chatting with the server. And the sources gave us 4 really simple, really useful starting points, didn't they? The basic frames for talking about preference.
Yeah, the core 4, I like, I love, I don't really like, and my favorite is super simple, immediately usable.
Using I love or my favorite is just adds that bit more personality, doesn't it? Sounds stronger, more natural than just saying I like for everything.
Definitely. But the real magic happens when you combine these simple frames with all that great descriptive vocabulary we talked about earlier, the textures, the preparation methods, the tastes.
Right, so you don't just say I like salad.
No, compare that to, oh, I love a really fresh salad, especially with a sharp lemon dressing and maybe some crispy croutons. See how much more vivid and natural that sounds.
Totally different. Or using the preparation words. You know, I don't really like things that are deep fried. I usually prefer grilled chicken or maybe something baked.
Exactly. You're using specific, more complex words, but fitting them into those simple conversational frames. It just makes you sound much more competent and, frankly, more interesting to talk to. You're not just listing items, you're describing experiences and preferences.
It's also really useful for explaining why you might want a substitution, instead of just saying no fries, which can sound a bit blunt.
Right. You could say something like, I'd prefer to avoid fried things if possible. Could I perhaps swap the fries for a side salad instead? You've politely stated the preference behind the request. It makes much more sense.
Okay, this all makes sense piece by piece. Now let's put it all together. Let's see how these elements, the words, the polite requests, the tone, the sharing of preference, work in a real flow, like a full restaurant interaction.
Perfect. Let's break down a typical scene, a dialogue between a customer and server, and see how these pieces fit.
This should really show that rhythm, that back and forth of dining from hello to goodbye, and how those polite phrases really anchor the whole thing. A scene analysis. The flow of dining. Extended dialogue. Okay, so it usually starts with the greeting and drink order. The server typically initiates, and notice how the customer jumps right in with polite language and specifics.
Right. So imagine the server says, "Hi there, welcome. How are you doing today? Can I start you off with something to drink?"
And the customer might reply, "I'm doing great, thank you. Could I please have a large sparkling water with no ice, please. See. Polite modal, could, please twice. Specific details like sparkling and no ice.
Perfect. Then maybe the server asks. Great choice. And have you had a chance to look over the menu, or would you like a few more minutes? Giving the customer control over timing.
Customer. I think I'm ready, thanks. But I'm a little torn between a couple of things. Actually, what do you recommend if I'm looking for something with fish, maybe on the lighter side, using that key phrase, but also giving context about their preference?
That's great interaction. So the server might say, oh, good question. Well, our pan-seared salmon is really popular. It comes with roasted vegetables, it's nice and flaky, and has a light citrus dressing. Notice the server using those good descriptive words. Pan-seared, flaky, light.
Okay, so the customer likes the sound of that and is ready for the main order, but maybe wants a small change, a substitution. This requires that polite hedging.
Customer. Oh, that sounds wonderful, actually. I'd like the salmon, please. Quick question. Could I possibly swap the roasted vegetables for a side of the mashed potatoes instead? Using I'd like, please. And then could I possibly to soften the substitution request?
Server. Absolutely. Not a problem at all. We can certainly do that for you. And for the mashed potatoes, would you like butter on those? Or perhaps a little cream cheese? Offering options.
A customer. Oh, just butter would be great. Thank you very much. Simple, polite confirmation.
Okay, order seems complete. But then the customer remembers something else. They need to ask for an extra item without sounding demanding.
Server confirms. Okay, so that's one pan-seared salmon with mashed potatoes with butter and one large sparkling water, no ice. Is there anything else I can get for you right now?
Customer. Actually, yes. Sorry. Could I also get some extra napkins when you bring the water? I tend to be a little clumsy sometimes, especially with fish. Using Hanshin? Could I also get... Adding sorry or actually softens the interruption, and maybe a little self-deprecating humor helps too.
Nice touch. Now let's imagine a small problem. Say the water arrives, but it does have ice. The customer needs to handle the error politely. This is crucial.
Customer. Excuse me, sorry to bother you, but I think I might have asked for no ice in the sparkling water. Would it be possible to get one without ice when you have a second? Thanks so much. Starting gently, using I think, or I might have, as a hedge, framing it as a possibility, would it be possible? And adding thanks avoids sounding accusatory.
Exactly. Calm, polite, clear. Okay, fast forward. Meal's finished. It was great. Time for the closing of the meal in gratitude.
Customer. That was absolutely delicious. Thank you so much. Could we please get the bill when you have a moment? Or if in the US, could we please get the check?
Server. Of course. Glad you enjoyed it. Did you particularly like the salmon? Maybe making a little connection.
Customer, yes, it was incredibly tender, cooked perfectly, and thanks again for the wonderful service. We really appreciate it. Using a specific positive word like tender and offering specific thanks for the service leaves a great final impression.
You see how all those little words could, please, possibly, I think, thank you, actually, sorry, they're constantly working throughout the conversation. They weave this thread of politeness and respect. It really is like a dance.
It is, and that rhythm, that flow, is what you want to practice. The source material actually highlighted 6 key lines from a simpler version of this scenario, perfect for practicing, for shadowing. They really pack in those polite structures.
Yeah, let's quickly recap those 6 for easy memory.
Would you like something to drink? That polite opening from the server.
2, could I have water with no ice, please? The customer's polite request with customization.
3, what do you recommend? That key question for advice.
4, I'd like the grilled chicken sandwich with salad, the typical polite main order.
5, anything else? The server's polite follow-up.
6, can I get the bill, please? Or checks, the polite closing. Practicing just these 6 lines helps embed that core polite structure.
Okay, brilliant. That really ties it all together. So let's do a final consolidation. We've gone from the why of food to the what, vocabulary, and the how, politeness and flow. Time for a quick mental check-in to make sure these key ideas are locked in.
Sounds good. Question 1, thinking about structure. What's the most polite way to ask for something, and what's the underlying reason it works in English?
Okay, structurally, it's using those modal verbs. Could I have? May I have? Would it be possible? Usually followed by please. And the reason is that idea of non-imposition, right? Softening the request by framing it as a question about possibility, not just a direct command.
That's exactly right. Okay, question 2. Let's say you want to make a change, like swapping fries for a salad. What kind of phrasing helps you do that politely beyond just saying no fries?
That's where hedging comes in again, using phrases like, could I possibly swap? Or maybe explaining briefly, I'm trying to avoid fried things. Would it be possible to substitute? making it a gentle request, maybe giving a slight reason.
Excellent. You nailed it. And question 3, that practical detail. What are the 2 different words used for the piece of paper you get at the end of the meal to pay, depending on whether you're primarily in North America or the UK?
Right. In the US and Canada, you generally ask for the check. In the UK, Australia, New Zealand, and many other places, it's the bill. And you always ask politely, "Can I get the check bill, please?"
Fantastic. Okay, one last practical tip we mentioned, which is really about the sound of politeness and actually helps you speak more smoothly overall. Remember the pronunciation of please.
Ah, yes, that little detail about the ending sound, making it a soft Z sound, not a sharp S.
That's the one. When you say pleasey with that gentle voiced Z, it actually helps relax the muscles around your mouth. It sounds softer, less abrupt. If you say pleases with a tense S, it can sound a bit harsh and might even make you feel slightly more tense when speaking.
Interesting how such a small phonetic detail can impact the feel.
It can. So practicing that phrase, maybe, could I have a coffee, please? And really focusing on that soft, pleasey sound helps build muscle memory for both the polite structure and the relaxed, fluent sound. Repetition is key.
That combination, the polite structure and that softer sound, that really gets you closer to sounding natural and confident.
Absolutely. So to recap everything, we've given you the essential food words, those important descriptors for taste and texture, the crucial polite structures using modals and hedging, and emphasize the friendly tone needed for real-world dining conversations.
And we really want you to focus on practicing just 3 absolutely critical phrases this week. Think of them as your go-to essential toolkit.
Number 1, could I have a coffee, water, tea, please? Practice it with different items.
Number 2, what do you recommend? Use it anytime you're unsure or want advice.
And number 3, can I get the bill check, please? Know which word to use where you are. Master these 3, and you've got a solid foundation.
Remember, as we've seen today, sounding polite and fluent in English is so much about how you say things, the structure and the tone, not just knowing lots of words. So here's a final thought for you to take away and maybe practice. We talked a lot about descriptive words like crispy, tender, creamy, flaky. If you had to pick just one word to describe your absolute ideal meal or food texture, what would that word be?
Ooh, good question.
And then how could you use one of those 3 core polite phrases? Could I have? Tea. What do you recommend? Tea. Can I get? To ask someone, maybe a server or a friend, about a dish using that specific descriptive word you chose. Give it a try. Go practice that rhythm.
Great challenge. Thanks for diving deep with us today on the Beacon English Podcast.
We'll catch you next time for another deep dive.